community pot.
Thanks, Julian. Good morning, everyone. So this morning, I just want to update, the decision was only actually made yesterday, so this was a great opportunity for us to start to get it out there to VCS colleagues. So as part of the response and recovery for COVID-19, specifically relating to hardship, Hartlepool Borough Council have identified a pot of £200,000 that will be eligible for voluntary and community sector colleagues in Hartlepool to apply for. So there's some very loose criteria around this, and we'll be doing some communications, and I'll ensure that an application form is circulated to this group after this morning. It's just a 2-page short application, and the closing date for that will be the 15th of January, to try and give colleagues some time to turn that around. So the application asks for evidence of need based on community engagement. It's intended to address hardship that's arising from COVID-19 that's had an impact on the community in Hartlepool. It's asked that it provides additionality rather than duplication of projects or replacing core funding. We'll ask for some clear impact and outcomes to be identified. It will be asked to be delivered through a collaborative approach across VCS, and also that there's a clear exit strategy, because this is a one-off pot of money, so it's not going to be something that's recurring. So that's all we ask. So the grant amount can be as much as organisations would like to apply for. So obviously there's up to £200,000. One organisation may wish to apply for the whole amount, or there might be organisations that apply for smaller amounts. And then there'll be an assessment process with a panel, and then key projects will be identified, and we anticipate that the awards will be made by February. So that's it really in a nutshell. I hope that gives everyone enough insight, and as I say, I'll ensure that the appropriate paperwork is circulated after today, and we'll start to get that out, and I'm more than happy to pick up conversations independently to discuss this in any more detail. Okay, thank you.
Gemma, just picking up on one of the criteria, did you mention something regarding collaboration?
Yeah, I think, I mean, to be honest, you know, I know that that's happening right across the board, but there is an expectation that this would be a collaborative approach, hoping that at least you're working with one other VCS organisation as part of this. So we would anticipate that, you know, there's a collaboration that comes together. It's not about collaborating with us, because we would expect that, you know, we would engage with that as appropriate and relevant, but it is around kind of collaboration across other VCS colleagues to try and just strengthen the impact of anything that's going to be applied for.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed, Gemma. I'm sure that's going to generate some questions, but we'll, you know, we'll come to those. Lovely. Okay, so could I now invite Lorraine McConnell of the National Lottery Communities Fund to Community Fund. Yeah, welcome, Lorraine.
Hello everybody. Yes, I think since the onset of the pandemic, we've focused on distributing emergency funds over a 6-month period. Initially our own funds, we then distributed government funds through the Coronavirus Community Support Fund. And then once that fund is closed, we've put in place a bridging fund, again with our own funds, so that we could support communities and the sector through the pandemic. As of this week, we expect tomorrow at lunchtime, we'll now be reintroducing our longer term funding. So it's a refreshed Reaching Communities and Partnership funding that will be on our website from lunchtime tomorrow. We'll continue to support people and communities most adversely impacted by COVID-19. So we can support groups to continue to deliver activity, responding to the immediate crisis or recovery. We can help organisations change, adapt, become more resilient so they can respond to future challenges. But ultimately, it's back to us wanting support communities to thrive. And in doing that, we want to help organisations to do more than survive, really. It's about adapting and changing and responding to future challenges. And there will be a reminder on our website that it's back to our priorities. Although our priorities were important through the crisis, there was more of a focus on helping organisations and communities to respond to the crisis. It's now back to build, supporting communities to thrive, which means building stronger relationships in and across communities, improving places and spaces that matter to communities, and helping more people reach their potential by supporting them at the earliest possible stage. So there will be a reminder of our priorities and all the information that you need to apply on the website, hopefully from tomorrow. And the way to apply now will be, if possible, through an updated online application process. But there is information there for anyone who's struggling to apply online. They can get in touch, and we will support.
Lovely, thanks very much indeed, Lorraine. You mentioned about helping organisations to adapt and change. Did you have any specifics in mind or examples of specifics?
I think there will be much more information available online tomorrow. It's really about, I think we've already seen a move since the onset of the crisis, through people responding, I guess, to short-term emergency responses, to moving towards new ways of delivering their services. And I guess that's what we want to see more of, in the future. But I do think largely that shift has already been implemented. We're seeing that, the sector is ahead of the game, and they're not just looking at what we're going to do in the next month or the next 3 months. They're looking at what can we do differently in the future, and how can we learn from what we're doing now. So, I think it's going to be more of that.
Oh, thanks, Lorraine. That's really clear. Yeah, lovely. Okay, likewise, I suspect there'll be some questions to you in a while. Okay, so let me just ask now if Lawrence McAnally from the Hospital of God could go next.
Thank you. Just unmuting. Good morning, everybody. Good to see people, albeit in various different rooms. And thanks for the invite, Julie. As some of you know, we're a charity based in Hartlepool, working primarily with older folks and dementia. But we've had a long history of a very small grants pot. In total, it's around £100,000 per year. And it's because technically we cover the northeast from south of the Tees to north of the Tweed, and a little bit of Durham wise, and I'm never quite sure where that border is, but the Pennines, I guess, are somewhere there. It's for the whole of the northeast. But I think it's safe to say in the last 18 months, couple of years, we've tried to focus more on smaller organisations and our local community. So I think we've made some inroads with, trying to help out Hartlepool-based organisations as best we can. Over the period, we run a very quick fix, short, I guess, COVID emergency, whatever you want to call it, quick application process, which one of our trustees oversaw, which was really thankful from my point of view. But we're about just before COVID kicked in, whenever that was, back in March, we changed to an online system. So previously most of our systems are very bureaucratic and paper-based and took donkeys, and we were just administratively a nightmare, quite frankly. So we've moved to an online system. We've got some tweaks to do on that, just to make it short and snappy really, and more effective. But then we'll be going out to launch. When I say launch, that sounds very grand, but it's not really that grand, just to open up the funds to applications round about some point in January 2021. And we'll have 2 rounds over the year. Historically, we've had 3 rounds, no idea why, but we're going to have 2 rounds. Again, feedback on how that works, whether that's good for people or not. Our focus will be on small grants. I think we publicise the most is up to around £3,000, but be honest, we get so many applications, we rarely make £3,000. The more between 1 and 2, I would say, is an average. Where it's possible, we'd like to give the amount of money people ask for, but again, we'll be hugely oversubscribed. So it's quite difficult to do that. In terms of criteria, I think it's local based, community organisations having an impact and doing good in their communities, and hopefully we start to build up some relationships with people to make it a little bit easier, I guess. And I think that's about it really. In terms of the criteria, is fairly open. Young, old, any particular group. Like I said, the focus is more on local based organisations rather than the big ones that jump in from time to time.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks very much indeed, Lawrence. That was all really, really clear. Great. Okay. So let me now ask whether Andrew Relton, are you going to be presenting for the PFC Trust?
No, I think I have to defer to Joe on this as a trustee.
Okay.
So Joe will do. Okay.
Joe, if you can unmute, Joe.
Try that one. Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah, welcome. Joe, what's your second name?
It's Dunne, D-U-N-N-E.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Joe. It's all yours.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late for the meeting. I had a lot of problems joining this morning. I'm not sure what's being discussed and really what you want from the meeting.
Okay, right. Let me explain. So this forum is the first of a regular event, we hope, whereby we bring together interested people from Hartlepool's community and voluntary sector to converse with funders with an interest in the town. So the format that we're using is sort of mini presentations, very brief presentations from the funders. And we've heard from the Borough Council, the National Lottery, and from the Hospital of God so far. And then following those mini presentations, we're going to ask each participant to come back briefly with perhaps one comment or suggestion and one question that they might like to put. And then we're going to gather all of those up and then come back to the panel of funders to ask for their responses.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Just a brief intro to the PFC Trust, which is the trust that we keep hearing about. So I'm sure it'll be appreciated hearing from you what you're all about.
Right. Good morning. As I said, my name is Joe Dunne. I'm one of the board trustees. At present, I don't know if you know the history of the PFC Trust. We've been very lucky. We had a lottery winner who originally came from Ireland, moved to Hartlepool to do a lot of work with a husband, moved back to Ireland and had a lottery win. To thank the people of Hartlepool, the 2 people involved started a charity off. They wanted to help the people of Hartlepool who in the past did help them, support them. And they've got great friendships with people of Hartlepool. So they've got twin charities set up. They've got one in Hartlepool, the PFC Trust, and they've got one set up in Northern Ireland from where they grew up and from where their parents lived. So the PFC Trust is trying to catch people that often other charities overlook or miss out or can't support for one reason or another. We've done a lot of work through the COVID time, which I know a lot of other charities have done the same. But what we do, we try to look for gaps. But what we also do, I think we try to be a little bit different from other charities. We try to link up. So if a charity puts an application to us for funding or a grant, what we do, we have specialist experts who work with us who are from the voluntary sector already. And they're trying to identify if there's other things apart from money that would help them. And that might be joined up with another organisation, another charity, another specialist. And it might be, so we may not give them funding, but what we might do, we might give them expert help to get a large amount of funding from another like national body. Because predominantly we're centred on Hartlepool, the Hartlepool area, the people from Hartlepool, to try to improve the life and life expectancies of people from the Hartlepool area. So that's one of our great works, but we're very, very diversified. Our leader, she's got great foresight, and although we're working all the time, she's looking at other areas we should be looking at. So because of that, we've recently introduced 2 kicks. Andrew, who you introduced earlier, he's our manager of our Hartlepool Together community interest company. And the idea of that kick is to identify projects which we can build upon to help the people of Hartlepool. And it's trying to be, as all kicks are, we try to be, if possible, like self-funding, and also to provide funds back into our PFC charity. Because of COVID, a lot of the ideas or projects that Andrew had been working on have been put on hold. But what we do, we try to diversify. We've just really, I think our biggest project at the moment is JAM, Jumpers and More. You're going to see a lot more about that, hopefully in the local press and the local media in the coming weeks. It's a lady who worked with the founder of the charity, who identified a need for ethnic minorities, asylum seekers, other people who needed help. So she started raising funds, clothing, donations, and she's got a couple of rooms now in the same place Andrew works. And basically, she collects the clothes up, sorts them all out, makes sure they're fit for purpose. Then she invites people in to take a choice. So that's probably our biggest project at the moment. But we've got a number which we're developing at the moment. Andrew's working hard with lots of different projects, but it's actually getting, we're trying, rather than do everything on our own, we're trying to work with other people, with other organisations, and try to get the good causes, the different charities, local charities, to actually support each other and maybe enhance what we can do. You know, as they always say, a group of people can do a lot more than individuals. So that's one of our great aims, really. And also we like to talk about pay forward. So we might help people today, and in the future they might be able to help us or the people of Hartlepool in their own way. So I think that's one of our areas we're trying to be slightly different from other charities. I don't know how much time you're given, that's all. I don't want to talk on too much.
No, that's fine. That's really clear. I'm sure. I mean, I've certainly learned much just by that, Joe, and I'm sure others have too. So no, that's great for now. So thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, let me now ask Diane Williams from the Middlesbrough and Teesside Philanthropic Foundation.
Morning everyone. Nice to see you all. Thanks for the introduction, Julian. Yeah, we do fund projects in Hartlepool, you'll be pleased to know, because you come under a TS postcode. And in our most recent grants, Hartlepool came out the best. Woohoo! Our grants programme is open. We do 3 panels a year for the grants. The next one will be in March. Applications have to be in, and also supplementary evidence or extra information we request being at least 2 weeks before. My colleague Jenny, she handles all the paperwork and prepares it for the trustee meetings, but I attend the trustee meetings as well. Our maximum grant is 5,000. We don't give, like a bit like lunch, we don't give them at £5,000. So ask what you need for what you need, rather than thinking I'll make it fit £5,000. Each grant meeting will only give out between 15,000 and 20,000. We had quite a lot of applications for the last one, but only 5 actually got shortlisted through to the final panel. So it's made the decision for the trustees fairly easy who was getting money. The things we don't take requests forward for are startup projects. We don't tend to fund salaries, but if it's classed as a bit of a project overall operational cost, and we see that without that person there, the project wouldn't run, rather than part-time and or volunteers, then we will consider it, but it's not normally something we would do. You have to be in a TS postcode to apply. We don't tend to fund national charities unless they've got a local branch, and that branch has a bank account of their own. So for example, like Samaritans do, Mind have their own sort of accounts and bank accounts. So we would help them, but we wouldn't help somebody potentially nationally that is just has an input. Amazing how many people write to us from national, or they used to. I think they finally got the to read our grant making policy, which is on the website, but they would apply for a few grand from us for a project, but they're sat on hundreds of thousands of pounds in the bank, and we're like, no, you've got more money than we have. The other ones, we can do some discretionary under £500 and under, still the same application form, but if you're in desperate need of a sort of a bit of money to do something or finish something off or start something up, you can ask us via the application form, or time permitting, I'm more than happy to speak to anyone if you want to just run something past me to see whether you think it would fit. Bearing in mind, I'm not the person who makes the final decision. So if you don't get the money, please don't shout at me. I can only help you put your best application and request forward for the board. We do have 2 board members who live in Hartlepool. We have a trustee in common with the PFC Trust now. And like many funders, we all talk to each other. So if you put on your application form to us that you've applied to somebody else, we will ring them and talk to them or email them. It's amazing how many people have said they have, and then we find out they haven't actually applied. So be very truthful on your application form. We also have a school hardship fund. I don't know if there's any schools on here, but the council, applicable to you guys, we give up to £500 school hardship fund grants to schools. There isn't an application form, they just have to contact info@teessidecharity.org.uk. That can be used however the schools see fit, whether that's for beds or for them to buy food, for food hampers or uniform. Trying to think what else we've done in the past. There's many things like that, heating, but they'd have to then go and buy the fuel or fuel cards or whatever it is they buy. So we trust the schools. It's based on the free school meals and the percentage of just about managing in schools. They can come to us more than once a year. At the minute, we're trying to give schools £50 shopping vouchers aimed at the families that have maybe lost their jobs, or they're on furlough on a basic hours contract, and really when they're working they would work maybe 30 hours, but they're only getting 80% of 5 hours or whatever it is. So by all means signpost schools to us. We do have connections with some of the schools over there, but not lots and lots of them. The other one that's going on, if you have any heroes in your charities, we have a Teesside Hero Award, which happens every month, COVID permitting. Ian from the Pooley Time Exchange was the recipient during COVID, which was quite a grand presentation with the help of another charity, lots of PPE and social distancing, and a Zoom to present him with the award. but the recipient gets to choose to give a donation to a local charity of £1,000. Quite often they put it back to their own charity. We have nominations for the next 6 months, but they are vetted by, for want of a better word, by the board again. So you just, again, email info@Teesside Charity telling us why you think that person is a worthy winner of a Teesside Hero Award. They're usually in a voluntary capacity. They might have done something usually for years and years, and are the hidden heroes that don't really want the reward, but are quite humbled when we actually present it. Our golden giveaway has been closed for the last, well, March, February, I think was the last one we did. Not because of any other reason other than it's mainly aimed at groups. And as we know, like gymnastic clubs, athletics clubs, scouts, any of those closed for COVID. So there was at that time no imminent need to give money to groups, but we do hope that we will be running one again in June. Now, that all depends how many people are telling us, yeah, we're back, have you got any funding, can you do this? It's a £25,000 pot that we open twice a year. So hopefully we will post it on our Facebook page when it opens. Our FAST fund, Financial Assistance for Sports People on Teesside, is for individual sports people. That again postponed because there was no competitions, people weren't travelling. So that again hopefully will open again in May. We also have 3 caravans at near Filey. You can nominate families to go for a free of charge break to the caravan. Stipulation, they haven't had a holiday in the last 3 years. The only exception to that, and only a couple of times have we been asked if we'll help families where a family member's terminally ill and it might be their last holiday, but that's not necessarily what they're there for. We're there for families who wouldn't normally be able to go on holiday or have never been on holiday. Most of our referrals are from schools and or groups. We don't really take the referrals from individuals. If individuals come to us, we'll direct them back to somebody who could refer them to us. We have done, but this isn't normally our remit, some beds and white goods during COVID. We might get the odd request now and again, but we've sort of, yeah, we've had quite a lot during COVID. Maximum we can do is 4 a month, and that's across the whole of Teesside. It's really, if you know, children who don't have beds, we will provide the beds for the kids, but we have done some for the parents, but not necessarily. It's usually the children, and again, washing machines or cookers, but that is limited to 4 a month. Things we're doing at the minute, looking at food poverty, food waste, food surplus. Again, the people who've lost their jobs and need a bit of help, and or those that have been furloughed and have got less income, and mental health. Although we don't really have lots of links with mental health charities in the area, so anybody knows any or wants to have a chat, please direct them to me. We love a bit of collaboration, whether that's collaborating with other funders. More than happy to be a partner on funding. We don't need the glory all for ourselves, and but we love a bit of collaboration between groups. I forget, was it Joe said you do better as a team, as a collection, than you do as an individual, and I couldn't agree more. So there you go, I think that's it. Thank you.
Diane, that was brilliant, and I can personally testify to Diane's helpfulness. Our recent experience of a grant going through the process was extremely helpful and made very easy. So worth contacting if you think you might have something of interest to the Middlesbrough and Teesside Philanthropic Foundation. Thank you. Okay, and last but not least, can I ask Alison Collins of North Star Ventures? Slightly different form of funding, but no less relevant.
Yes, good morning. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Julie, for the invite. So yeah, I'm Alison. I work for North Star Ventures, but the important thing about what we do is the North East Social Investment Fund. We have a number of funds under our remit, but the Social Investment Fund is the one of relevance today. We cover the whole of the region, and we've been making investments, that's social investments, over the past 5.5 years. We deliver a 20-year fund here in the region, and that includes £10 million as repayable finance to voluntary community and social enterprises within our region. We've made investment in Hartlepool. We've made investments all across the northeast, and we are continuing to do so. I think obviously the key thing to note, of course, is it's predominantly repayable finance that we provide to organisations that typically have a model, an income generation model that can allow that organisation to produce a surplus, and part of that surplus is then used to repay the finance over time. We're really flexible in terms of the length of time over which we can lend the funds over, and the way in which we'll kind of create an investment alongside the organisation that suits their needs. Our finance comes from socially minded investors. You'll have heard of many of them. Esme Fairbairn Foundation, Joseph Rowntree Foundation, what was Northern Rock Foundation. We have their legacy funding to redistribute as social investment, as well as Big Society Capital and our own foundation at North Star. So the premise is to really help support organisations to develop their social impact, and we have a number of social impact areas that we'll fund activity under. They're really broad, and that's an intentional thing. So they are homelessness, youth reoffending, poverty and debt, health and social care, mental health, unemployment, and the regeneration of deprived communities. So there's pretty much something that tends to cross a number of pathways there. We're not really sort of prescriptive about what that needs to look like. We understand these things do merge as well. So we help support organisations who may be in a position to borrow the finance to help support all sorts of different things that are going on within that organisation. I think people typically think, oh, if I'm borrowing finance, it's because I'm purchasing an asset, I'm buying a building, I'm buying some equipment. But actually the vast majority of our finance is used for cash flowing and supporting an organisation in terms of their day-to-day kind of running costs. We provide finance that is unrestricted. So what comes with that is the sense of allowing an organisation to use that finance to help support and grow and help their organisation become more sustainable over the longer term. We're not a short-term funding provider. We're here for the medium to long term. And our investments typically range from around, well, from anything actually 1 or 2 years right through to 10 years or more actually. And because of that, we have a really engaged approach with the way we work with organisations. We don't just distribute the finance and then wait to see that come back in. We proactively work alongside the organisation, which, you know, has really kind of been shown, I suppose, our engaged approach throughout the COVID pandemic, because what we've seen is organisations struggle, and we've helped support them during this current phase, and where necessary, you know, we've paused repayments, we've provided further repayment holidays if we've needed to. We work flexibly is what I'm saying really. At present and through until March, we have some grant money to blend in with the social investment funds that we provide. And that is in direct response to the COVID situation. So it's not standalone grant money, it's to help you know, blend in with any social investment that an organisation's in a position to take. And the other kind of grant money that we're involved with is Access Foundation have a fund called REACH, and that is to help support organisations who are serious about taking on social investment, but jointly between the social investor and the applicant organisation, we perhaps find that there's some work that we want to see that organisation do in preparation for taking on social investment It might be about doing some of the finances, the business plan. It could be something very specific and bespoke to that particular proposal. And there is grant money available to help support organisations get investment ready, and we can help direct organisations towards that. That is a competitive grant fund as well. It's not a given. So we don't have an application form. We tend not to work with lots of paper. We're fairly fleet of foot, and we tend to make decisions in weeks, not months. And I think that's the other misconception. People think social investment is a really long, elongated process. But occasionally perhaps it is, but we tend to be able to cut through a lot of red tape fairly rapidly. We have our committees as and when we need them. We don't have set dates. We try to respond to when an organisation's in need of finance, and we'll work really closely with an organisation to look at what they need, and we help build that proposal together. So if you want any more information, I suppose, Julian, are you going to circulate details sort of after the event? Yeah, thought so. More than happy to kind of take a call from anyone who wants to know some more information.
Many thanks, Alison. I must say that when you came to our funder forum, I mean, it seems like in a different era, but when we sat together in a room and you presented, you transformed in a single presentation my kind of attitude and beliefs about social investment funding. And I'm pleased you spoke a little bit at length about the way in which you get alongside organisations and work with them. That helped to change my kind of understanding of what it was all about. So I'm sure that your presentation just now will have sparked some questions and comments as well. So we'll see shortly. But in our normal kind of haphazard way, we're now going to give a few apologies. Julie?
Yeah, this is on behalf of funders. There's an apology from the Ballinger Trust and also from Greg's. And it was quite short notice that we brought this together, so unfortunately they can't be here today, but they are very interested in meeting up with us in future events, hopefully, if this becomes a regular conversation. So just let us know.
Lovely, thanks Julie. Okay, so slight change to advertised format. If those of you who would like to make a comment and or ask a question, if you could use the raise hand facility of Zoom and indicate, then in time-honoured fashion, I'll go around the screen to those of you with a raised hand, and we'll take those together, and then we'll see to whom the questions and comments apply. And then once everyone has had that opportunity, that will also give the funders a little bit of time to think about what their response might be. We'll then come to them. So if you could indicate with a raised hand, anybody who would like to ask a question or make a comment.
Zoom's not giving me the option for a raised hand, so I've put a thumbs up, if that's okay. I don't know why, but it isn't.
Introduce yourself, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, my name's Rachel Austin. I'm the coordinator of Hartlepool Deaf Centre, and I'd like to make a couple of comments. Clearly, thank you to, great to hear from all of these fantastic organisations offering funding support. And what I'm about to say next is not meant as a criticism, but I feel one clear aspect is missing from what I've heard this morning, and I think that it's funding for accessibility and for inclusion, and I'm sure that this is kind of implicit in everybody's application process, but from where I'm sitting representing members of the deaf community, being implicit is not enough. We need it to be really clear and really a huge part of the application process. Without going on too long, the deaf community, I feel, are very marginalised in our society, in our local community, and since the start of COVID and before that, I've been representing them, but it's really got very, very difficult. And they are constantly not included in mainstream services because there's not the money there to pay for inclusion. And so I've got two proposals that I'd like you to consider. The first one is for the community pot. I would like to propose that the council top slice the community pot, specifically to fund access and inclusion. And this can be as broad as we want it to be. We can create the criteria that would meet the needs of those people who are not accessing our services, the most marginalised within our communities, for whatever barriers that are presenting themselves. You know, something like the community pot could really fund education and awareness raising across all of our organisations, so we understand better the needs within our community and how to begin to start planning to meet those needs. And my second proposal is to the funders to make, I'd like to convince funders to make sure that the application process has a very, very clear access and inclusion part built into it that is mandatory, that we all need to reflect on our organisations and ask the question, you know, what support do I need to be inclusive to my whole community? So I think the education part would raise that awareness, and then for the funders to make it very, very implicit that this is a requirement, will really help to plug the gaps that are currently there in our community and wider society. So my question is, what do you think of that proposal?
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. Very, very clearly and powerfully put. We'll come back to that. The funders are almost certainly thinking about how they might want to respond to that. Okay, let's see who else we have. Ian Corley.
Hi everyone, just want to thank Julian for putting this together. It's really, it's really been informative for us, and good to see so many funders here today. I think I work with most of you in one way or another, and you've all supported the work we do, so thank you for that. Just one for Alison at North Star Ventures, the Social Investment Fund. What is the interest rate on the Social Investment Fund? And yeah, basically, I'm just inquiring about the interest rate, just some work we do and maybe of use. That would be the question.
Brilliant, lovely. That's really clear, Ian. Yeah, I'll give Alison some time to think about whether, in the light of any other questions, she wants to come back on that and any other kind of surrounding information. That's certainly rearing its head in some work that Julie and I are doing on the Larch programme, so that might be interesting. Great, thanks very much, Ian. Steve Mudd from PINS. Can't hear you just yet, Steve. I'll tell you what, you try and get your tech sorted, and we'll come to Donna Stubbs, and then I'll come back to you, Steve. Donna, would you like to introduce yourself and make your comment, ask a question?
Yeah, thank you. It's been a really useful session. I've got a first question for Gemma. Sorry, I'm Donna Stubbs. I'm from Street Games, and I'm the North East Sustainability Lead. And Street Games is a national anti-poverty charity, although we do have about 150 partners across the North East. We don't do a great deal of delivery ourselves. We do tend to deliver through these partners, or what we call locally trusted organisations. And our objectives are to work with young people to help them become safer, healthier and more successful. And we do that through a range of things, food poverty, mental health. We do tend to use the hook of what we call doorstep sport. So using like physical activity sessions, but nothing elite athletes, anything like that. It's just about getting on the car park, having a bit of fun and getting the connections with young people that way. So my first question was for Gemma, and it's really good news to hear about the Hartlepool Hardship Fund that's coming out. But I know that the government have made some decisions recently about getting money to families over the, well, before March. And I know there's talk of that being focused on free school meal families. So will this hardship fund, will it be open to applications? I'm guessing with hardship, you know, food comes up a lot. I'm thinking about the timescales, so decisions will be made in February. So would the council be open to thinking about things like holiday activities for young people where there's a bit of cooking done, fresh food, providing them with meals, hampers to take home, getting that sort of family cooking connection in, things like that?
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Donna. That's a very specific, clear question that we'll come back to Gemma in a moment to respond to.
Thank you.
Steve, have you got your tech sorted? No, is the short answer. That's a shame. If you want to put a question in the chat, of course, then we can take it in that way. Okay. So what time? Oh, blimey. Right. So I'm going to come to the funders now. And again, I know Gemma has. Steve, go on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Well, it's not very promising sound. I think there might be a slow connection or something. But
you can hear me?
Not really, Steve. Put your question in the chat, and we'll make sure it's asked. So I know that Gemma has to leave fairly shortly. So there's Rachel's points about, well, a very specific idea of top slicing, and any thoughts you might have about the making much more explicit and clear that accessibility should be addressed.
Sorry, Julian, was that you wanted me to come in there?
Please.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, Rachel, you raised really, relevant points, and I think that it's really important that that kind of accessibility is. I completely understand what you're saying about it being really explicit. I think without doing the good old local authority bureaucracy spiel, it's taken us from August to now to get this through to a decision. If we were to then top slice it and change that decision process, I'd need to take that back through the appropriate channels, and therefore then distributing this funding, which I already think has taken longer than we'd anticipated, would delay that process a huge amount. I do think, however, within the criteria, there is an opportunity for us to be able to consider if you were to apply and have a real focus on that kind of accessibility agenda. I mean, we are talking about hardship, but that can mean a huge amount. We're not specifically saying it's hardship associated to a specific area. It's about really what COVID's had an impact on the communities and population of Hartlepool, and therefore what can our response be to supporting those communities to recover in association to hardship. So I am quite confident that the criteria is loose enough that we would be able to look at that without having to go back to a decision to say we'll top slice that and be able to allocate. And I'm more than happy to pick up a conversation around what that might look like. Again, it would have to go through an assessment process, but I think we would welcome as many thoughts and creative ideas around this as is possible. So in terms of the question from Street Games, again, I think as long as it's additionality and it's not repeating something that already exists, then again, hardship associated to you know, access to physical activity, food and other aspects like that, then again, from my perspective, it fits. You know, we're quite happy to look at hardship across all levels. You know, when we talk about food, we talk about access to service, we talk about access to you know, clothes and items, as well as digital, which is a really big up and coming issue that's been quite clearly exacerbated throughout COVID. So I think you know, we try to quite intentionally not put too much on this to restrict. So from my perspective, I would say that would be suitable for application.
And Gemma, given your comments about not wanting to be overly restrictive, Graham Alton from Changing Futures North East has asked how many bids might come from a single collaboration. Would the same apply in answer to that? You'd kind of have to look and see what the impact was going to be.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's going to be kind of through assessment that we decide. We haven't put any restrictions on this to say that, you know, a collaboration can only apply for one pot. You know, if there's a collaboration that decides to apply for the whole £200,000 and that's split across a number of specific aspects, then that's kind of open for debate and assessment. So it is reasonably loose in terms of how we want to do this, and then as an authority we would just work with you to see how, again, you know, we can align and collaborate services and opportunities. So, you know, if there was a collaboration of everyone in here, for example, to kind of come up with something for 200,000, or if you kind of split that into some smaller amounts for specific projects, I think the opportunity is there to almost present us with that offer. I don't want this to, well, you know, me loosely representing the organisation, we don't want this to be too much of a tedious process. The important thing for us is this money gets into the communities to support those most in need.
Thank you very much indeed, Gemma. On which note, there's also the opportunity to apply as a collaboration for something called the Thriving Communities Fund, which is all about embedding and supporting social prescribing. And we are going to devote the next Sector Connector, same time on the 15th of December, to looking at whether, and that's the discussion, there might be a Hartlepool, call it Thriving Communities Network or similar, Healthy Communities Network, that could be in a position to apply for the Thriving Communities Fund, and possibly that might also want to apply for some of the community pot. So 15th of December, we'll be talking about that, we suggest. Thank you very much, Gemma. Lorraine, would you like to come back on Rachel's very specific points, you know, raising big questions about accessibility? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. We have actually, our funding officers across the country have been receiving training to prepare us for our refreshed Reaching Communities and Partnerships, and part of that has included what we've called golden threads that should go through all of our funding, and one of those has been diversity and inclusion. I haven't yet seen what our website is going to look like and how it's going to introduce the fund, but of course our funding is for all communities. But what I certainly will do is I'm interested to see how our information is going to be presented on our website, and I will also take your comments back to our development team who are behind that. So, you know, thank you for them. And just to say, we encourage any applications that, you know, involve inclusion and accessibility. It's something that we look at. In particular, underpinning our funding is that people are in the lead, you know, so it's very much community led, people in the lead, and we're looking at involvement from the community and accessibility as you know, as the very foundation of our funding.
Lovely, thanks Lorraine. And can we just follow that up with one that Steve was trying to ask, but his connection hasn't permitted verbally.
Okay.
Can previous recipients of the Reaching Communities Fund sort of reapply or apply under the new fund?
Yes, you can, yes.
Lovely.
And if you apply under the new fund and your proposal or your funding request isn't successful, you can apply again. But we encourage you to, you know, respond to the feedback that you've been given. So we do try to give, you know, good feedback so that that can help you with your next application. And although it is an online process, I am the funding officer for Hartlepool. You can access my my email address through Hartley Power. And if you would like a conversation, I do encourage you to look at our website, the relaunch of our longer term funding. But then if you have any questions that get in touch, you know, we can arrange a call and I'm here to support you.
That's brilliant, Lorraine. Thank you very much indeed. Lawrence, would you like to come back or comment on any of the Donna's question and Rachel's points? Now, we've lost your sound somehow, but you're not showing as muted.
There you go. Am I back?
That's better.
Two buttons confused me. Been thinking in particular about Rachel's question. And I don't know, you know, I think a discussion, because I suppose we would probably have a view that voluntary and community sector organisations reach the parts of communities that others don't reach, I guess. And I think that would something most VCS organisations or social enterprises would purport as true, but clearly what you're saying, Rachel, is actually that doesn't really work, or there's still gaps. And I'm just curious to investigate that a little bit further in terms of why there's still gaps, why funds aren't meeting those organisations, or is it just that there's I know so much pressure on those groups that maybe the infrastructure, for want of a better word, isn't there? Or I always find that a lot of people, especially in small areas like Teesside, like Hartlepool, people are so busy doing that it takes a lot of time to put funding applications in, and it's not necessarily the size of the form or everything like that. It's the thinking that goes behind it, and the headspace. And I often think that people, like I say, are so busy dealing with the day-to-day in crisis or that demand that it's quite difficult to think strategically, if you like, for a funded application. So it's kind of how do we conquer that? Because clearly what you're saying is that there's still gaps, and I'm sure we should all have that commitment. But if it's not explicit enough, how do we make it more explicit, and how do we actually enact it? So sorry, that's my question back to Rachel, I think.
Right, okay, so I'll take that, Lawrence, that you'd be open to a conversation with Rachel to give you some ideas about that. But one point I'd make from Rachel's contributions over the duration of the pandemic at our earlier VCS Sector Connector meetings is that it has laid bare the exclusion experienced by deaf people.
Yeah.
Despite huge efforts on Rachel's behalf, it really is persisting and I was going to say intractable, but it isn't. Just compare Boris Johnson and Nicola Sturgeon's press conferences. That, you know, there's part of the answer. You know, there's a signer when Nicola Sturgeon, and I think when Mark Drayford speaks as well. Whereas in England, we don't have that. Now, we hope that the Borough Council are going to make some progress with their comms, by using signers, and there was an indication that might be happening. There's no movement as yet, but I'm sure, I mean, I'm looking intently at Rachel now, that you'd be happy, Rachel, to contact Lawrence independently and have that conversation. And would the organisations were as enlightened, Lawrence, as you you wish was the case? But I fear that it's not so. Okay, I wonder if Joe or Andrew, or however you would like to play it, would like to respond from PFC.
Good morning once again. In regards to Rachel's question about inclusivity, we do our best, but we're always prepared to learn. We've got lots of people with various skills, and I think it's just a matter of maybe talking with Rachel more directly to find out what difference, because sometimes the smallest things that make the big difference, dyslexia with the coloured paper or the coloured gels, etc. So we just need to talk to people to find out what's going to help. But we're very open to new ideas, new ways of working. We're updating our application system all the time to make it easier for the user. But it's certainly something we'll take aboard. I'll raise it at the next board meeting, which is Wednesday evening for the PFC Trust. I'll raise that as one of the points from this meeting, and hopefully we'll get some feedback for the 17th for your next meeting.
Rachel, your diary is filling up, but I'm sure you're very comfortable with that. Yeah, Julie's prompting me just to draw out, in case anybody didn't hear it or they were, I don't know, taking a sip of tea when it was said. But Diane said from the Teesside Philanthropic about how they would like to see more interest from mental health charities. So, you know, we have some excellent such in Hartlepool. So just to repeat that point, really, that Diane made. Anyway, Diane, would you like to respond at all to the questions and comments made?
Yeah, I think if I'm honest, I'm just a bit naive in terms of actually what Rachel would want us to do. Is it the application form that's not the right, because it's on the web? Is that a hindrance? Is it, or is it that you want some sort of priority to applications that are from those in the sector in terms of either deaf or vision or disability? I'm a little unclear, if I'm perfectly honest, so tell me.
Thanks for your honesty. Rachel, briefly, but I think it's another diary date.
Yeah, really briefly. No, it's about us all of our organisations being inclusive and accessible. So using profoundly deaf British Sign Language users as the example, they are parents, they are carers, they are elderly, they are young people, they are disabled, they are able-bodied. They fall into every one of our own target groups, but their deafness excludes them further. And I get approached by many people, many organisations saying, oh, I've been approached by a deaf person, can you help us provide a communication support? And so it's really like raising awareness and asking people to project future. It's very difficult, but if funders can support equality impact assessments, what are the gaps in your service? Why? Look, we all have gaps in our own service when it comes to inclusion and accessibility, and it's really asking funders to help tease that out and ask the right questions so that people can predict. And almost every organisation should be putting some money aside for access and inclusion in the application process.
Okay, yep, fair enough. Okay, yeah.
Thanks very much, Rachel. Thanks, Diane. Alison, would you like to comment?
Yeah, sure. No, I think you know, Rachel certainly brought a very pertinent point to the surface here, and I think it's it's about making sure as funders that we're taking account of and being very mindful of all the protected characteristics actually that we know our applicants, you know, are it's relevant to them basically. And I suppose one thing we've been very mindful of is making sure we're taking notice of, you know, who we're investing in, what the makeup of the boards of those organisations look like in terms of making sure we're challenging things around diversity and inclusion, sort of ensuring that the typical kind of decision makers within organisations are not just that, they're not the typical sort of demographic that we're used to seeing, and that in turn challenges us in our decision making. Who are we awarding finance to? You know, what does that look like? Where is that going? And how is that making a difference to people's lives? And so it's not just trying to take a surface look at these things. And I think by trying to be sort of fairly open and free of sort of bureaucratic processes, which you know we enjoy not having around our fund, we do try to be as open and as inclusive to welcoming applications from a wide range of different organisations with very different needs. But it's a conversation that needs to keep on being you know, reared, and I really applaud Rachel for you know, presenting that to us and creating the challenge. You know, never stop doing that really, because it's sadly it continues to need to be recognised. And just trying to come back to Ian's point, if I should at this stage, if that's all right. Yeah. So Ian at the big league there, thank you for the question. The interest rate comes up a lot for us. It's the point at which people kind of take a sharp intake of breath, because they kind of go, oh, right, it's a little bit more expensive than I was anticipating. So to be clear, our interest rate is between 6 and 10%. So that's where people suddenly kind of put their pen down and look the other way perhaps sometimes. But the reason for that, and it's important we talk about this, is because I suppose what we're doing, the reason why this £10 million fund was developed in the region is because there was a recognition that grant funding isn't necessarily going to be the most sustainable option for organisations who are perhaps planning something over the medium to long term. It won't be for every organisation. There has to be an income generation model within that organisation that can afford to make repayments over time. We're really flexible. We spread our term for as long as we've got our funds, so it ticks down every year. So we've got about 13 years left over which we can lend the finance. And we're providing the investment for organisations that really can't be supported by mainstream lenders. You know, that it's the things that they're not inclined to fund. We're doing the riskier things, I suppose, is what we're saying here. And we can do other things within the fund that help make it flexible. You know, that we can do interest and or capital repayment holidays, particularly at the beginning where an organisation is perhaps increasing their service delivery. They're not in a position to make full repayments initially, and we work up towards that. We do have grant money, as I said, at the minute in our mix, which is the first time we've had that. And taking on, you know, a proportion of what you might have borrowed as grant can help reduce the cost of what you're borrowing, because some of that grant money may, in essence, help cover the initial loan repayments, for example. It is there as another financing tool for the sector, where organisations are in a position to be able to think about taking some longer term, medium to longer term finance to help support the organisation over time. So, you know, £100,000 is our minimum level of investment. We typically don't kind of just drop that in on day one. We'll usually look at tranching in investment, and that again helps organisations make that somewhat affordable. And it's always designed around what an organisation needs. There's never a template where we say this is what you borrow, this is what it looks like. We'll always work closely with an organisation to look at what works. And if it doesn't, we say that really quickly. We don't want to waste organisations' time. We don't want them designing stuff just for us. It's got to be something that supports the whole organisation from the very core, rather than just kind of a project here, a project there. We want to support the inner workings of that organisation. You know, it's core funding typically that we're about providing, because we recognise the value and the benefit of that. So I hope that kind of answers the question. It is hard when you haven't got a you know, an obvious list of things. It looks like this, you apply this way. Being so open and flexible, usually the best way to go about sort of exploring this is just to pick up the phone, have a conversation. Typically we'd be out there coming down, seeing you, meeting you, having a look at what you're doing, spending time with your organisation, your trustees, your volunteers, some of your service users, and really getting to know you, because it's the relationship that matters. And it's a bit of a cliche, but we do genuinely invest in people. And, you know, it's the people behind that organisation or involved in it that we're truly investing in. So harder to do in this kind of current situation, but always very happy to have a conversation. Let's just sit and have a chat about it. Okay.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed, Alison.